Hey guys, Lord Naren White here, the Holy Ghost, the one true God, back with you with the next video in my series reading The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain. Without further ado, returning to The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn as read by Lord Naren White. Most everybody would have been satisfied with the pile and took it on trust, but no, they must count it. So they counts it, and it comes out $415 short, says the king. Darn him! I wonder what he done with that $415. They worried over that a while and ransacked all around for it. Then the duke says, Well, he was a pretty sick man, and likely he made a mistake. I reckon that's the way of it. The best way is to let it go and keep still about it. We can spare it. Oh, shucks. Yes, we can spare it. I don't know you're nothing about that. It's the count I'm thinking about. We want to be awful square and open and above board here, you know. We want to lug this here money upstairs and count it before everybody. And there ain't nothing suspicious. But when the dead man says there's $6,000, you know, we don't want to. Hold on, says the Duke. Let's make up the deficit. And he begun to haul out yaller boys out of his pocket. It's a most amazing idea, Duke. You have got a rattling clever head on you, says the king. Blessed if the old nunsuch ain't hepping us out again. And he began to haul out yellow jackets and stag them up. It most busted them, but they made up the 6,000 clean and clear. Say, says the Duke, I got another idea. Let's go upstairs and count this money, and then take and give to the girls. Good land, Duke, let me hug you. It's the most dazzling idea ever a man struck. You have certainly got the most astonishing head I ever see. Oh, this is the boss dodge, there ain't no mistake about it. Let 'em fetch along their suspicions now if they want to. This'll lay 'em out. When we got upstairs, everybody gathered around the table, and the king counted it and stacked it up. $300 in a pile, 20 elegant little piles. Everybody looked hungry at it, and licked their chops. Then they raked it into the bag again, and I see the king begin to swell himself up for another speech. He says, Friends all, my poor brother that lays yonder has done generous by them that's left behind in the vale of sorrows. He has done generous by these your poor little lambs that he loved and sheltered, and that's left fatherless and motherless. Yes, and we that knowed him knows that he would have done a more generous by 'em, if he hadn't been afeard of wounding his dear William and me. Now wouldn't he? There ain't no question about it in my mind. Well then, what kind of brothers would it be that'd stand in his way at such a time? And what kind of uncles would it be that'd rob, yes, rob, such poor sweet lambs as these, at he loved at such a time? If I know William, and I think I do, I'll just ask him. He turns around and begins to make a lot of signs to the Duke with his hands, and the Duke he looks at him stupid and leather-headed a while. Then all of a sudden he seems to catch his meaning, and jumps for the king, goo-gooing with all his might for joy, and hugs him about 15 times before he lets him up. Then the king says, I knowed it. I reckon that'll convince anybody the way he feels about it. Here, Mary Jane, Susan Jonah, take the money. Take it all. It's the gift of him that lays yonder, cold but joyful. Mary Jane, she went for him, and Susan, the hare lip, went for the Duke, and then such another hugging and kissing I never seen yet. And everybody crowded up with the tears in their eyes, and most shook the hands off of them fraud, saying all the time, You dear good souls, how lovely, how could you? Well then, pretty soon all hands got to talking about the diseased again, and how good he was, and what a loss he was, and all that before long a big iron-jawed man worked himself in there from outside and stood a-listening and looking, and not saying anything, and nobody saying anything to him either, because the king was talking and they was all busy listening. The king was saying in the middle of something he'd started in on, They being particular friends of the deceased, that's why they're invited here this evening. But tomorrow we want all to come, everybody. For he respected everybody, he liked everybody, and so it's fitting that his funeral orgies should be public. And so he went a mooning on, liking to hear himself talk, and every little while he fetched in his funeral orgies again, till the Duke he couldn't stand it no more. So he writes on a little scrap of paper, Obsequies, you old fool, and folds it up, and goes to a goo-gooing and reaching it over people's heads to him. The king, he reads it and puts it in his pocket, and says, Poor William, afflicted as he is, his heart's a luz all right. Asks me to invite everybody to come to the funeral. Wants me to make 'em all welcome, but he needn't to worry. It was just what I was at. Then he weaves along again, perfectly calm, and goes to drooping in his funeral orgies again every now and then, just like he'd done before. And when he'd done it the third time, he says, I say orgies, not because it's the common term, because it ain't obsequies being the common term, but because orgies is the right term. Obsequies ain't used in England no more now. It's gone out. We say orgies now in England. Orgies is better because it means the thing you're after more exact. It's a word that's made up out in the Greek orgo, outside, open, abroad, and the Hebrew jessom, to plant, cover up, hence inter. So you see, funeral orgies is an open or public funeral. He was the worst I ever struck. Well, the iron-jawed man, he laughed right in his face. Everybody was shocked. Everybody says, Why, doctor? And Abner Shackelford says, Why, Robinson, ain't you heard the news? This is Harvey Wilkes. The king, he smiled eager and shoved out his flapper and says, Is it my poor brother's dear good friend and physician? Keep your hands off me, says the doctor. You talk like an Englishman, don't you? It's the worst imitation I ever heard. You, Peter Wilkes's brother, you're a fraud, that's what you are. Well, how they all took on. They crowded around the doctor and tried to quiet him down and tried to explain to him and tell him how Harvey'd showed in 40 ways that he was Harvey, and knowed everybody by name, and the names of the very dogs, and begged him not to hurt Harvey's feelings, and the poor girl's feelings, and all that. But it warn't no use. He stormed right along and said any man that pretended to be an Englishman and could imitate the lingo no better than what he did was a fraud and a liar. The poor girls was hanging to the king and crying, and all of a sudden the doctor ups and turns on them. He says, I was your father's friend, and I'm your friend, and I warn you as a friend and an honest one that protects you and keep you out of harm and trouble, that wants to protect you, to turn your backs on that scoundrel and have nothing to do with him. The ignorant tramp, with his idiotic Greek and Hebrew, as he calls it. He is the thinnest of a kind of an impostor, has come here with a lot of empty names and facts which he's picked up somewheres, and you take them for proofs and are helped to fool yourselves by these foolish friends here, who ought to know better. Mary Jane Wilkes, you know me for your friend, and for your unselfish friend too. Now listen to me. Turn this pitiful rascal out. I beg you to do it, will you? Mary Jane straightened herself up, and but she was handsome. She says, Here's my answer. She hove up the bag of money and put it in the king's hands, and says, Take this $6,000 and invest it for me, and my sisters any way you want to, and don't give us no receipt for it. Then she put her arm around the king on one side, and Susan and the hare-lip done the same on the other. Everybody clapped their hands and stomped on the floor like a perfect storm, whilst the king held up his head and smiled proud. The doctor says, All right, I'll wash my hands of the matter, but I warn you all that a time's coming when you're going to feel sick whenever you think of this day. And away he went. All right, doctor, says the king, kinder mocking him. We'll try and get him to send for you, which made them all laugh, and they said it was a prime good hit. We'll go ahead and stop there for this week and start with chapter 26 next week. As usual, I want to say thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. Please like, comment, and subscribe, as it greatly helps the channel. Light be with you all. Take care, and thanks again.